important. My co-host is currently in Paris. I think she's going to Miami here pretty soon, so you'll see her soon. She's getting herself, I guess, figured out while she's there, but that's the update for that. I think this is going to be about the second episode that's come out of the new episodes, which is great. It's great. We have a special guest here who's worked with some pretty important people. ClickFunnels. I think that's what it is, right?
I primarily build funnels on ClickFunnels. I've worked with Patrick Beth David, Jeremy Miner, worked with publishing.com. We've worked with Pedro Adeo, done stuff for Pete Vargas. We've consulted with like Kajabi, primarily work a lot with adspend.com. And then, we even worked with Jordan Belfort. So that was
Jordan
an interesting one.
Okay. Cool. What's, so give the audience some background to you first before you go into like kind of what you do. So a little bit of do you have like a funny story or a tragic story or something that you would think would be a good basis to introduce you to the audience?
Yeah. So I think like I always kind of grew up as more or less kind of like that introverted guy that nobody really like I didn't talk a whole lot in high school and junior high and stuff like that. I was very introverted and I was just kind of trying to find my way of like fitting in with people.
Yeah. I vibe with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was always kind of like a really confusing experience going through school because I always felt like I didn't really know who I was. I always had that idea of like who I needed to present to myself to be to gain the validation of everybody else and stuff like that. So I was always confused, kind of like who I was, what I wanted to do, everything like that. So in school, I did really well when I applied myself, but I always kind of like just didn't have the interest in what we were learning, what we were doing, things like that. I liked math, but it was just because like it was challenging. I didn't graduate high school because I failed language arts because my stories didn't necessarily fit the tale or the format that my language arts teacher wanted us to be writing in.
That happened to me too.
Because like that's the thing is I always wanted to focus in on like what did I feel when I was writing. I didn't want to like put the story as second priority and put format as like the first priority. So for me, it was always like I never really was able to kind of find my stride until afterwards where, I found like my first coach and he kind of introduced me to the world of funnels and copywriting and conversions and stuff like that. And I was like, I can be creative and like I can write the way like I actually like writing and I can do all of these things to like help businesses grow. I was like, I love this. So that was just kind of like for me in this point in my life, I was like, this is a really exciting thing for me to be able to kind of finally express the person that I've been so confused about becoming. So it gave me a medium to be able to come out and be kind of more of the artistic person that I've always felt like being. And I just kind of, never really had the outlet to do that.
On the journey of like becoming that person, do you think, well, obviously you think school is useless in the comparison of actual learning and being creative?
That's, to be honest, like that's the thing is I've always been self-directed. So for me, school is like a curriculum. Like I really would like to be good at that stuff because it would be so much more structured. And I feel like I'd be getting a lot of stuff done if like someone was kind of like telling me kind of like the stuff that I need to learn, but I could never find somebody who understood what I needed to learn. So I just wanted out and I was like, I got to do this and I got to try these things and I got to I learned the hard way. I got to try it. I got to find out the stove's hot. I got to, find my kind of like own way of going through the path as opposed to following somebody else's. And that's just kind of like the way that I am and the way that I'm built. And it was just kind of like accepting that. So for me, self-directed learning has always been the best type of learning for me. And school has always been, something that never provided that for me.
How did you find your coach? Like on that journey of interactions, did you just start networking? Was it a basis of, I don't like what I'm seeing, I want to try and expand myself into something new?
So my mom, she's always been like, my mom always told me like, do whatever you want in this life, but just own the business. And she's
Smart.
always pushed me to tap into the entrepreneurial side. So she ran a company called Beaner's Fun Cuts for Kids and franchised it. And then I was doing bar backing, and like I was doing roofing, and then I went into car sales, and I went to serving, and then I went into bar backing. It's like I wasn't even a full-blown bartender. I was literally the guy that just like cleaned cups. And I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not, I feel like I'm not, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm just going to start drop shipping.
Were you into it early?
The easiest way. So what I did is, this was 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. Yeah, I'd say 7 years ago. I quit that. And then I went in and just, started creating a store. It was Artho Apparel. It was just like a t-shirt company, like print on demand. Came up with all my own designs and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed it. Building the website, super enjoyed that. Again, it's just that creative kind of like artist modality that I was touching into. And I started to realize I really liked it. I didn't know how to bring my vision to life though. So that was like a lot of self-paced learning. And then it came to the point where we were launching it. And then I remember I was in my basement with my buddy Gordy, and I'm like, I'm going to pick out my M4 right now. Like, should I just like go get it? Because I know as soon as this launches, it's going to be a success. And then I remember launching it, and it was just crickets, absolute crickets. And then I started to realize, like, when you have a business and then all of a sudden your friends see the business, like they ask for handouts and they're like, hey, so you can give me free stuff. And it's like, it's interesting because it's like, they're not supporting the business. They're just wanting to get stuff from the business. So it just kind of showed me the type of people that I was around at the time. And them kind of asking me questions about the business, not in a way of like, almost kind of like they wanted me to kind of like validate the excuse they have in their head that's been suppressing them from moving something forward in their own life. So it's like, okay, Tyler didn't actually make it work. So I'm doing the right thing by staying here.
Yeah, I've experienced that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty common when you start stuff.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough.
Yeah. So it was a flop, and I maybe had like 2 orders. One of them was my mom. And I was running Facebook ads on her credit card, and she was like, okay, it's
no go.
It's not working. And I'm not going to say stop, but I'm going to say it's time that you get a coach, because let's do this calculated way. Let's do this from someone who's already gone through these kind of like trials and tribulations, and let's figure out how we can do it successfully. So she actually hooked me up with my first coach, who's Vince Del Monte. And he was a guy who was selling fitness products online, more info products. And he was coming out with like a clothing line and like supplement line and all those stuff. So she signed me up for his mastermind, and we flew out to Toronto to get a taste of kind of like what coaching and mastermind looks like. So we went there, and that's where I got my first coach and started learning.
How do you think that process was? Because I know some people have very different opinions on coaching, and they call it like pyramid scheme, or it's not worth your money. You can do this, you can do that. How, on a scale from what you would represent in your experience, do you think it's very highly valued?
I would say it is the catalyst that started really everything. And I think like that's the thing is God used that as the way of guiding me into what I feel like now I feel my purpose in. Because what happens is I've had this conversation a few times where it's like, I know what I need to do in my subconscious mind, but it's always a battle of like, okay, I have shiny object syndrome. I'm looking over here. I'm looking over there. I don't know what to do today. It's just like, there's so much opportunity and there's so many things that you can do. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's what's keeping you held back.
Yeah. That's actually, that's a big thing when you start actually seeing the bigger picture that a lot of people suffer with. Are you still in the process of trying to work around it, or have you kind of found a routine of getting out of the shiny objects?
So like for me right now, I'm focused on what I'm doing. Like focused to a fault, almost kind of like where it's like, this is just the thing that I have to get right. And like for me, coaches have always helped me refine to be like, okay, these are the things you need to focus on first, so that you can just like higher leverage activities so that you can get the progress that you're looking for. And that's the thing, is like you just identifying the thing that you need to focus on first that's where you can put all your time and energy in, because otherwise your time and energy is just spent on all of these things that are, well, they're not going to really like get you the momentum that you're looking for. And then it just burns you out way quicker. So that's why I think like, that's why coaches are so important, because they help you get to that goal that you have, being most efficient with your energy and being most efficient with your time. And now I've gone through so many coaching programs, and my mom's like, no more coaching programs, because now I get to the point where my coaches will be like, do this. And I'm like, no.
So you become the coach now, essentially, or what is it? The Padawan to the Jedi?
I mean, like I'm by no means a master or anything like that, but I'm back to the self-directed part, because I needed coaching at the beginning because I had no idea what I'm doing. And I didn't want to play Minesweeper. I didn't want to go over and just be like, okay, this is going to just destroy me, or this is going to be a mistake. So I wanted to avoid as many mistakes as possible. And now I'm at a point where it's like, I have so much that I know I need to do in my subconscious mind. And I'm like continuously reflecting on it, and I'm aware of it. And it's like, now I don't necessarily need someone to kind of like point out the things. I just need to take action on them. So I've collected all of this data, and now I just need to actually take all of that data now, because there's a balance. Because if you're just always going and searching for new things, you're just going to continue to collect data. But if you never do anything with it, then what happens? And I think like that was one thing that I started to realize, is like I just started to focus more on learning more and obtaining as much information as I possibly could. And when I felt like I was getting that information, it made me feel productive. But there came a time where I'm like, I need to actually start doing things with it, and like jumping on all of these coaching calls. Like you go into some of these coaching programs and they're like, we have 5 coaching calls a week.
It's a lot.
And I'm like, how are you supposed to digest any of that? Like I would rather have like one thing now, and then I just spend the month implementing that one thing, and then it gives me the progress that I'm looking for. Because now what I have works. What I have works. Like the system works. I've been able to repeat it and it works. Now it just needs to be made more efficient and optimized. So it's like, for me, I just need to look at, okay, well, what are the gaps, and how can I bring people in to help support me with those gaps? And if I have questions, like, to be honest now, like if I have questions, I would rather go to somebody in my network to ask them kind of like what they're doing, and like they're doing great things. So it's like, I respect them and I admire everything that they're doing. And it's like the insights that they give me, and like they do it just out of goodwill and gesture. And like, for me, that's more valuable to me right now than a coaching program. But if I hit another roadblock, then it's like, okay, well, what coach can I bring on that will help me just set the foundation initially, so I know I'm doing it right, and then overcome this roadblock. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's like problem sense mixed with, what is it? What's the word I'm thinking about? Delegating. Yeah, because you're at a point where I'm assuming you've kind of hit the top of the triangle from things that you were trying to do, and it's like more linear now.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point in time, it's kind of, how do I make sure I stay linear with that peak, so I'm never going back down and flipping the triangle upside down and going wide? Because once you start going wide, you see too much, and it's like, oh no, here I go again. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I don't know about the audience. What would you, if you could simplify the basis of step by step of, okay, this is what I did? Because a lot of, in this, I guess, generation, a lot of people aren't really liking school. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've seen the stats where majority of degrees are kind of useless at this point in time. Go to school for 4 years, get in debt and no job.
Yep.
It's kind of an endless cycle of, okay, now I got to go work at a job that I don't even want to work at, and spend the next, 2-3 years applying for jobs, waiting for someone to call me back with no experience.
Yep.
So in a problem set of a world where we're kind of dealing with that on a daily basis, what would some basic steps you would take in a way of, okay, instead of me just sitting at home, hopping on Indeed, applying to 10,000 different jobs, Because some people have. I'm sure you've seen those videos. People like, I apply for 400 jobs on Indeed, no replies. It goes crazy.
Yeah. No, it's nuts. And yeah, to see some of the people with degrees having like the only people that respond back are like, yeah, you can respond to customer support emails. And it's wild.
It is, yeah.
It's wild. To be honest, like I think like the big thing for me, I'd always known that I wanted to be an artist. And it's like, I didn't know how that would translate into a career, because I was always like, I don't want to be an artist. Like I want to be an artist, but I don't, because I'm not gonna make money doing that.
It's hard, like drawing artists. Yeah.
So it was a barrier. Like that was for me like an excuse. And I think like that's one thing that I've noticed the most is in like reflecting on your internal narrative is a really big thing that I tend to do. Because then you can start to figure out like, what am I telling myself that's keeping me in this comfortable place? And like everything that you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we've wanted is on the other side of challenges. And I think like one thing that you can just really start to do early on, and what I did is like so before like I went to Artho Apparel for kind of like building that shop out, I did like Indigrow. I tried like all of these other kind of like micro businesses to try to figure something out. I tried building like an Instagram following and was like, okay, I'm going to maybe just try this. But then I was like, okay, well then you run into another problem and another problem and another problem. So it's like the more things you try, the more problems you're going to run into. And if you just keep reinventing on the problems that you're running into to come up with the ideal like track that's going to take you to where you want to go, then that's the best thing possible. As soon as you identify the track, then you just follow it. But I think like that's the thing is like, if you take that triangle again and you're going wide at the top, like I think it's a really important thing to just try things out that are within scope of what you really love to do the most. Because like for me with being an artist, I thought graphic design would be better. So I was trying some graphic design stuff because like I was making the mock-ups for like my shirts and stuff like that. So I started just doing graphic design stuff because it was low barrier. It was like, people come to you, they just want you to design an ebook. It's like $150. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
And then, yeah, one time someone was like, okay, do you want to design a website? And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what to charge for that. But I was able, like, the problem that I found with graphic design is I had to do revision after revision after revision. And because people are very specific about that sort of thing. And the amount that you get paid for it is very low.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of graphic designers, and like to go on graphic design, like all you got to do is go on to Canva and yeah, you can design something.
Yeah, it's pretty easy now.
So what I found is it's a bit more challenging for people to build web pages.
I agree.
Because everybody can design something on Canva. It's a little bit more tricky to design something on Canva. Or I mean, on like a web page. So like ClickFunnels. I initially started with WordPress, and that was just way too big of an undertaking. So I started moving into ClickFunnels. It was more drag and drop. And so it started like wide, and like I was trying different things, and like graphic design was like the one thing where I was like, okay, I can be an artist. This is a cool thing. I'll explore this a bit more. And then the challenge came up where it's like, okay, my time spent on this versus the money I get, it's not where I want it to be. So I'm going to reinvent this and go a step deeper and do something a little bit more challenging. And like, that was the fear. I was like, okay, now I gotta like make web pages.
Do you think the fear was people, or do you think the fear was your own like self-doubt?
The fear was letting people down.
So it was other people's opinions on your work.
Essentially, because like that's the thing is like more responsibility. Like each level of that pyramid kind of comes with more responsibility. So
yeah, the top is the most.
Yeah, so you're taking on something additional. Now I got to think about like, okay, like tech support and like making sure that it's done right and making sure that like it looks good on mobile and desktop, and that it will like eventually I got to the place where like make sure it converts.
Right.
But the thing I was concerned about is it's very, very technical. So I went from just creating something on like Photoshop or Canva to now creating a web page that I now have to learn how to code. and I come up with like CSS and like how I'm able to kind of like diagnose issues that I run into. I remember this one time I was trying to change a border color or like a divider color, and I literally had like a full on mental breakdown because I was like, I don't know how to change this. And it's like one little request from a client is like, hey, can you change the divider color? And I'm like, I don't know how.
What did you do?
So that's where I had to go to those videos that you see on YouTube, and it's like outlining like all those different things that it's so much information, but you have to kind of like, you have to take in as much as you possibly can from all of the lessons that they're teaching you. And then eventually like you'll learn to do one thing and then you stack up your library of knowledge.
It usually becomes easier at that point.
As soon as that's the thing, is it's just the starting point, because I don't know where to find videos that show like the specific page builder I'm using. Cause that time with the border, I was using like WordPress. So I was like, okay, maybe I should just simplify and go to a platform where it's more drag and drop and like I can do things a bit easier. So like that was the thing, is maybe just taking a step back, kind of like letting my ego, not necessarily like I want to take more than I can. So it's like coming back in an uncomfortable place to a place where you know you can handle it, not going too fast, too quick.
Yeah.
So taking a slower pace. For me, that was going to ClickFunnels and just learning everything I can about the platform. And what I found is like, rather than me learning all these different platforms, it was me for just good to figure out one platform and become really good at that one platform and learn as much as I can and stack up my like index of knowledge around everything that I need to do on that platform to make sure that I can accommodate whatever requests come my way. So that was the step. So I went from graphic design and then I went into web design, and then I found the platform that I can get really good at. And then that's where I put my energy into learning as much as I possibly could about that platform, so that I felt more confident taking on jobs, taking on build outs, so that I knew whatever the client would ask that I'd be able to do. Now, the page is great, but does it work? Like, is it going to make the money? Is it going to generate the leads that they're looking for? And that's one thing that I found is like, I made them really nice looking, but I didn't take into account any of the conversion elements.
I see what you're saying. What do you think about like chronic searchers? And the example of you went from ClickFunnels to WordPress, graphic design, and then you stopped on ClickFunnels and you're like, okay, this is where it needs to be. What would you have done if you were just constantly searching and you just like, I don't know where to stop? Like, where do you stop? Like, where is it when you're like, okay, I need to stop and like just focus on this one thing? And it's too bad if there's something better out there. I just need to like take this and run with it.
The best platform and tool and resource is the one you use. So I can't tell you how many times I switched between ClickFunnels and Elementor, and then I think I even used Divi for a little bit, and then tried out like Kartra, Kajabi. I went from all of them, and I was like, which one's best? Which one's best? And like, to be completely honest with you, I just decided to land on ClickFunnels because, to be honest, it was the last one I wanted to land on, because all the pages that I built on ClickFunnels looked terrible.
Oh no.
They look like ClickFunnels pages. So they all looked like
the copy and
for
paste.
me, it was like, they all look like scammy products, and like, it all looks terrible. So like, my goal then became, how do I take the design aesthetics that I can build on WordPress with all of these and add them into a platform like ClickFunnels, because it was simple. And what I did is I started building up my knowledge base in CSS. So now I can go in and I can write scripts that I only have to write once, that I can now add to my ClickFunnels pages to make them look nice. And as soon as I figured that out, I was like, okay, now I got the best of both worlds. I have a simple like platform to build all these pages off of, and I can still make them look really awesome in Mint. And it, like, for me, it was just like, okay, I'm just going to choose this platform because it works. It's as simple as it gets for me to be able to implement these things. Yes, the CSS is tough, so I'll learn that. But to be honest, like, this is just the platform that I want to be with. And like, I like the community behind ClickFunnels too. Yeah, in terms of like I feel like there's a big community behind it. So the big community behind it made it a little bit easier to kind of like build up. yeah, my ability to kind of like go in and make the tweaks to the pages and know what to do and ask questions. So yeah, I just, I was always struggling with what platform is the best, but then I just like kind of laid out what I need it to do and what I really want it to do. And I came up with a solution of like, how can I make this platform accomplish all of it? And it checked all the boxes that I know I had a necessity for. So I just stopped looking.
Okay. So once you check, was that the bare minimum boxes or majority of the boxes?
So I think like one thing that we always kind of run into when we're choosing something is like, oh, I want to do this. What if I want to do this? It's like the what ifs. Like, if I want to add these features, what am I going to use? And I think like that's the part that we run into the most struggles with, is because we start future pacing on what the platform is going to be able to support. And I think like for me anyways, ClickFunnels did everything that I need to do now. There's definitely things that I can't necessarily do on ClickFunnels that now I would like to kind of have the ability to do, but then that's when you just add in different platforms where you refer them out to other people. I think like the big thing for me is it's like, rather than looking at something as it's like, okay, there's to a degree, there's an extent where you need to be able to have a platform that you can innovate on, but don't overcomplicate it. And I think like for me anyways, when I chose ClickFunnels, it was just because it did everything that I needed to do right now. And I didn't really think of like all of the different platform specific constraints that it would have moving forward, because to me, it wasn't really a big deal, because I knew like with the community base and like with all those different kind of like plugins and stuff that were coming out for it, I'd be able to figure something out. And if it doesn't necessarily support that, I can always figure it out later down the road.
True. What's like opportunity wise that you've seen? Do you think you would have more opportunity if you follow the societal norms of do this, do this, do that? Or do you see more opportunity in you taking a leap of faith and jumping into a ship that you had no idea the destination of?
Jumping in, because that's the thing is like, if I take all of the time, because it's folly, like you go back to that biblical basis of like the devil wants you to be in folly, and folly is like you knowing what to do, but not doing it anyways. Like for me, that was the best resource that I had access to at that time. So that was really like what helped me make the decision, is like, this seems like it makes the most sense right now. Yes, I should probably take into account of like constraints in the future, but I'll deal with those when I run into it. And it's like, as I get better at this too, I'm going to be able to come up with better ways to navigate the platform and go around and kind of like make my own means from it. And that was the thing, is like, it's a jump of faith. It's a leap of faith. And you just kind of have to go in and trust the process and just trusting God. And for me, it was just trusting that I'm going to be able to make it work. And like, to be honest, it's not really like, if you start on a platform, or if you make a decision and worst case scenario, that decision at the end of the road turns out not to be the right decision, the worst case is you just go back and you just do it all again from process of elimination. And you have to take the step before you can identify if something is not going to work or not, because you can't always look into the future. You can't always future pace everything. And I think like that's the problem, is because we always are looking so far into like the big picture that it's like we need something to support all of this growth. But the thing that I know in working with the guys that I've worked with is it's like, just use whatever is simple and available and what we can do now, and then reinvent it if it comes up. And for me, it just has always been more or less kind of like something that I've never really, I've never really run into a place where I'm like, I can't figure out a solution for this, because I always just have that trusting feeling in myself and like the brain that God gave me to come up and make something work. And it's through the process of that eliminating that I am able to identify, okay, maybe this wasn't the best way to do it. I'll do it differently next time.
Do you think that's like a big thing of, because your biggest supporter, I'm assuming, is your mother, right?
Yep.
Do you think that's from the upraising of constantly providing some type of purpose to your life, where now you have this uncanny belief where you can literally do anything, but the reality is you're actually doing it, and it adds to that confidence?
It does add to the confidence, because the more obstacles you overcome, the more confident you're overcoming obstacles in the future. And I think, like, because Alex Ramosi talks about that, where it's like you can yell all of these affirmations at yourself in the mirror, but doing it is just going to give you the confidence that you're looking for. And for me, not necessarily like, because you can trust in like the tools you're using, but the thing is, you really need to trust in the mindset you have when approaching those tools. And like, if you have the right mindset, then you really don't really have a challenge that you can overcome. You can always figure it out. And that's the thing that I'm noticing the most. And people who have achieved huge things and they've done like big accomplishments, they run into roadblocks, but they always just like with one roadblock at a time. And they're able to come up with like these amazing ideas. And these amazing ideas aren't something that happen overnight. They're a sequence of problems that they've solved that come to that point in the pyramid, that come to that like the tipping point. Like, if you think about the tipping point, like you have to put so much time and energy and in pushing it up. But then there becomes that tipping point where all of a sudden it starts pulling you forward. And I think like that's when your confidence hits, and that's when you know that your mindset is able to overcome problems and come up with solutions, because that's what you're getting paid for. Is you're getting like, that's essentially like the essence of business is providing solutions to people. And as soon as you're able to cultivate a mindset where you know that you can come up with solutions, then like that's essentially like the confidence that you can go out into the marketplace and be able to find bigger problems to solve for people, and then they're going to pay bigger money for it, and they're going to respect like the solutions that you bring to the table, because you have so much experience in terms of coming up with like dealing with challenges prior. And I find like, for me anyways, I'm not afraid of the challenges anymore. And I'm not afraid of like limitations that we run into or obstacles that we run into, because I've been building it up over a period of time, but I have better communication now. And I think like a big part of that is communicating that with, first of all, yourself, your team, and your clients. And when you're communicating, people are receptive. And it's like, you can communicate it and say, okay, this isn't possible. We can't do this. And that's the wrong way to approach it. But it's like, okay, we're having issues approaching this. Here are some additional solutions. And then that's the thing, is like, all you got to do is just take challenges and turn them into solutions. And as soon as you start cultivating the mindset where you start focusing on the solutions rather than the problems as being the end, then that's where you just become, I think like that's where your flow is. Like that's where like we're meant to be.
The flow state, yeah.
Yeah.
Something I always say that my mindset is negative positive. If you're always focusing on a negative thing, you're going to be transitioning downhill. If you're focusing on positive things, you're going to be going uphill. So if your mindset is always problem, and then solution, 10 more problems, solution, it's okay, why are you focusing on so many problems when you could be creating more solutions? So it's like having that balance of, okay, there will be negative things that happen in your life. It doesn't really matter what you do. It's just life. But how do you focus on the positive output where, okay, this is the communication, like you were saying, I can garnish it to land so it's more positive base of, hey, this is what's going on. What can we do to solve it? Which is positive thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's my like go-to with that. It's always negative versus positive. And it really has helped me in growing my own companies and growing my own even personal life. Is the less negative things I focus on, it clears up my headspace, which then adds on to my business, personal, friends, etc. And I can think so much better.
Because that's a great point. Because if all you focus in on like problems, they're going to come themselves. You don't have to focus on them. They're going to come. that's the thing that I've found is it's like worrying about the problem isn't going to do anything. So it's like problems are inevitable and they're going to come. All you need to do is start focusing on the solution and just kind of like ideating and preparing for like, if this were to happen, what are some solutions that I can come up with to make sure that that's not going to be the end all be all? And yeah, focusing on solutions and just kind of putting yourself in that mindset of being able to ideate like worst case scenarios. If this happens, what can I do about it? And then it just makes you feel better because then you're like, okay, really all of these problems that I'm thinking of in my head, the worst case scenario isn't so bad. And these are some solutions that I can do to counteract the problem that I'd run into. So then you just kind of walk into it a little less fearful of what exactly am I going to be running into, and more like you're confident in the way that you're going to be able to approach it when that problem is inevitably going to come.
Yeah. My dog seemed to have joined us.
Heck yeah, he did.
She loves to say hi.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, brother, because yeah, it's really thinking solution focused.
I agree. It's kind of like I always think of it as engineering, where by default you kind of have an engineering mindset of problem solving. Because if you look at simple code, it's like, okay, well, here's a problem. Where's like the problem in the code? And then you got like backlog, backtrack, see where it scales from, and then address it. Once you fix it, usually it fixes the code, but there could be like some other issues it's running into. Now you got to backlog it again. Mm-hmm. It's never perfect, but when it is like by definition of perfect, it goes pretty seamless. And that chart that you have will work for the next, I don't know, 2 years. Obviously, I don't know if you've ever heard Moore's Law.
No.
Every 6 months, there's new technology. So by definition, every 6 months, there's going to be something new. So you got to kind of stay ahead of the trend, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of hard. A little bit here and there.
It is, but like it's also exciting too.
Very exciting. I agree. Keeps your brain active. It's nice.
Because to be honest, like I get bored if there's no challenge.
I agree. I follow that. Yeah.
Yeah. I for me, I get bored if there's no challenge. And like, I think like as a business owner, you kind of run into that problem like you were talking about where you fixate a little bit too much on the negatives and the problems sometimes. But I think like that's the thing is like looking at it as a game and looking at it as a fun activity, because as soon as you start overcoming more problems, then it becomes something that you know you can do. So then you try to see kind of like what problems you're capable of overcoming.
Yeah, it becomes like a problem solving game.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Because then you're just like, oh, this happened. How do I fix it? And then boom. Like the company that I'm partnered with, we're having like a whole rebrand. And it was kind of necessary, to be honest. It was like going downhill. Like that company had no hope. In revenue, it does good. Like it's about like I think right now it's worth around like 40, 50 million at the moment, mm-hmm. which is good. But the problem is it's the highest volume for the industry it's in here in Canada. It's the highest volume that it currently sits at. Like doesn't have any competitors, mm-hmm. but it's just not very good at customer service. So I was in charge of trying to fix that. I did the best I could. And I'm like, this is not fixable. It's just like, there's so much, there comes a point where if you have 5 years of just bad press, mm-hmm. and then you take 3 months to try to fix it, it's not going to work. And sometimes it will, but usually when you come to that assumption, okay, look, what do I do? So either you could be like, okay, well, we just like shut down the company. It's like, no, we just rebrand. It's a typical rebrand of a company, but it's like, how do you rebrand it so you don't fall into the same issues? Mm-hmm. And then you create a new operation where it lands into, if someone ends up finding that, okay, you guys rebrand, it's like, no, we bought the company. Just different lingo, mm-hmm. but just business. It's not like the most, I guess, ethical way of doing things, but you gotta do what you gotta do in business.
It's still a solution.
It's a solution.
I think that, to be honest, like that is one of like the biggest things that my coach taught me early on is reputation management.
Oh, it's huge. Like it's, once it goes down, it's just going to keep going down. Mm-hmm. And you will have to fight. Just, what is it? What is the saying? teeth and nail.
Tooth and nail, yeah.
Yeah, of just like grinding, like gritty in it, and it's not gonna work. Sometimes it does, but now you've spent what 10 sleepless days agonizing over it, trying to fix past mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like social media. You say something 10 years ago, and all of a sudden, boom! You see what's happening to Mr. Beast in the news.
No,
you know who Mr. Beast is, right?
that I do.
Yeah, he's in hot water.
For what?
It's a mix of stuff. I haven't really kept up to date with it. I'm not going to say too much of it on the pod, but you know,
no bueno, no good,
no bueno. You know, it's a no go. Yeah, and that's like the downside. Like media, there's certain things you just can't talk about. You just know it's like, okay, let's say YouTube's golden boy. All of a sudden, I start saying stuff about him. Boom! What happened to my YouTube channel?
Mr. Beast, the popular YouTuber, is currently facing multiple controversies.
I don't really know if you can do that with regular stuff. It's okay. Our editors read it out to us. What is it?
Mr. Beast, the popular YouTuber, is currently facing multiple controversies. One major issue revolves around his upcoming Amazon Prime show, Beast Games. Allegations have surfaced about unsafe working conditions during the show's filming, including reports of contestants being hospitalized, facing sleep deprivation, and lack of adequate food and medical care. These reports have raised significant concerns about the treatment of participants and their overall safety on set.
So essentially, like what that was we just read an article about the Mr. Beast games. It's been like, he got a deal with Amazon. I think it was like a $50 million deal. And then I guess they just didn't really do well in operations. Which is in of itself, for example, so your audience is not children. His is children. When people come to you, usually they're like, what, young adults, give or take? Like, how do I get into this?
Well, with my audience, it's business owners.
Business
owners, corporations. Yeah.
Yeah, so you are selling more of like a, hey, I can solve this problem. Mr. B is selling more of like a, hey, let me hit your dopamine and make you feel good. But the problem is he's addressing it in a way where it's good on the public eye, but the background is not as clean, I guess, per se. Do you fall into certain situations like that when you meet certain companies and the front looks good and the back, you finally get into it and you're like, okay, this is just not what I signed up for?
Well, it's interesting because, yeah, there are some like companies that you go into and you would expect more. But it's like the truth of the matter is really like majority of companies are running into the same issues that you're having. And it's just at a higher level. And it's interesting because you kind of start to see the similarities like companies run into. Like, that's the thing is like every company is just trying to perfect their marketing. Like, to be honest, they find stuff that works and they just keep reusing it. And then there becomes a time where it just becomes a little bit more stagnant. And then they want to try to reinvent something else. It's like there's lots of people running into shiny object syndrome. And it's like, you might be running into it as it's just kind of like a solo entrepreneur. Okay, well, like, what do I do? But like, think about companies too.
Here, break down shiny object syndrome.
So shiny object syndrome is you putting your focus towards something else because it looks greener, it looks better, it looks grander. But the truth of the matter is like, just a simple saying, like the grass is greenest where you water it. So it's like, rather than focusing and putting your time and energy into all these different places, like there's definitely a spot for innovation. And there's definitely a spot for, okay, like we don't want to stay stagnant. We got to keep reinventing and rebuilding and kind of focus on some new ways that we can do things. But when it comes to a point where it's like all you're doing is just kind of like jumping from one thing to another, then you're never going to do anything well. And I think like that's one thing that I find is more common than you would think. Is it's like people wanting to jump to all of these different ideas and try new ways of doing things to a detriment where it's like there's almost kind of like too much going on. So staying focused is just kind of like a really important thing where it's like, okay, let's just keep optimizing this until we get it to a point where it's like it's working like clockwork. And I find like the best companies to work with are the ones that you go in and they kind of have that North Star and they have the discipline, they know what works, they've been able to refine it, and they just want to continue to do it better and maybe just tack on some additional things to help support and supplement the growth. There's a lot of companies that you'll go in and then there's a little bit more chaotic because they're all just trying to figure out what works. They're trying to figure all these different things because now they got like one best ways to describe a company is like a bucket. And then you're essentially like your revenue and your customers are water in the bucket. And then you have leaky holes. So a lot of these companies, if they didn't build the foundation right, they're just getting all of like the water in the bucket because now like they have all of this revenue and these customers in, but they have these holes in their bucket. Like, okay, they didn't really figure out the best way to approach their paid advertising, or they didn't necessarily like build out the customer service correctly, but they can't stop filling the bucket because now they have payroll, they have all of these expenses and overhead. So it's like they're reactively approaching building their business. So it's like, I'm just continuously going to pour water in because I have to, otherwise everything will implode, but there's holes in the bucket.
There's always cash flow issues when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Major cash flow. I've always seen when companies are just on the fly dealing with stuff, it's horrible. It's not a company you want to work with because everything's always backlogged. Like someone's not getting paid, bonuses aren't going out. They're trying this, trying that. It's like a child who just finally learned about emotions. Every single thing is reactive. You know?
Yeah. And that all comes down to leadership because the fish rots versus the head. And when the leadership is always kind of like going from one thing to another and is not necessarily like confident or clear on where they want to be taking things and the vision, then it's just the rest of the company is just trying to be reactive to where they think that they need to be going. And if you kind of like one thing, for example, is like messaging. Like messaging is really important. Like who's the target audience? What exactly do we solve in terms of like their problems? What is it that we really do? And imagine like for us building out all like the assets and all the marketing and stuff, and then you change the messaging. It's like, okay, now we have to redo all of that again. So it's like, I think like that's the thing that is really important, and that I find like the best companies that we work with are the ones who they're self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
They're self-aware. They know where they want to go, and then they're looking to find the best ways of doing that. But they do have a strong sense or idea or team behind them in terms of they know what to do to kind of get momentum already and get the progress that they're looking for already. And they're not jumping from one thing to another and trying to reinvent all of these different aspects of their business. It's like they're just making smaller changes and tweaks to kind of like the foundational pieces so that it's more sturdy, so that they can go and they can try all these different activities and try these different things. But it's also like they're bonuses because it's like they have the foundation that works. They have the proven process that works. They don't really focus on going fast. They focus on going long. And
it's the long term that really, short term companies are like, what do you say, new age companies are better, or kind of mom, papa, or bigger like 10, 20-year-old companies are less impulsive in that manner of constantly trying to just find something new here, and no direction at all. Leadership just has no idea what they're doing.
That's a great question, because it's like if you stay too traditional, then you become comfortable with where you are, and then you become afraid of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like too innovative, then you kind of get shiny object syndrome, and then it's kind of just like a cash collection business. I just want to collect as much cash as possible. I think like the biggest part of that is purpose focused. So if you have like a purpose focused business, you want to be able to fulfill the purpose in whatever modality is best. So it's like, what's the reason for what you're doing? And I think like for me anyways, it's like I'm always trying to think of a newer and better way that I can reach more people, but I do it at a very slow pace. So like the way that I would like, I don't really know how I can describe it with other businesses like mom and pop shops and stuff like that. Like I don't really know kind of like what goes on in their head. I've seen a lot of businesses and kind of like I don't really see like a pattern per se, but I see like in the businesses that I've enjoyed working with the most and that I found to be the most stable, they have a very strong sense of purpose and impact for their community and what they're wanting to do. And that drives the business forward. And they're just looking at better ways to be able to improve on that customer service and deliverable, as opposed to something that they need to like do so that their overhead is covered and everything like that. So it's not scarcity mindset. They're not serving their clients and they're not serving their customers out of a fear or a sense of need, but they're serving it out of a full cup. Like, hey, I have been blessed with this information, or I have been blessed with the ability to impact people. So therefore I want to do it, and I want to do it on a bigger scale. So it's like your purpose is something that pushes you to want to improve on it and do it to a wider scale. So therefore you come up with more ideas of like how you can, widen the gap. I think like for me anyways, kind of going back to what we were talking about with reputation management, my coach, one of the first lessons he told me is like, slow is fast. And I took that into account with me building my business, because it's like, it's scary because with the company that you were talking about, you're now having to go into a rebrand to kind of deal with negative customer service like messages and posts of reviews and stuff like that. And that always really freaked me out, because as we were talking, like as I went from like that inverted pyramid from the top to the next, because responsibility, like my fear has always been letting people down. It's like the more responsible like ability you take, like if you do something wrong, it can affect your customer service and it can reflect your reputation. And that's why I was always afraid to go further and further down. And what I realized is a challenge that I've become more like I focus a lot on overcoming is like, if someone's not happy, what can I do to make them happy? And that has been like the foundational piece for my business, because I've never run paid ads. I've never done anything like that. It's all been referral based, and it's referral based because slow for me is fast. I just want to focus on doing the best job that I possibly can and making people happy with what I provide them. And if they're not happy, what can I do to make them happy? Because that is one challenge that I hope I never run into, and I never want to run into, is like having to do a rebrand or having to do anything like that. For me, that's kind of like the basis of everything. What do I need to do to like make my clients happy? Because that's what I want at the end of the day. Like that's my purpose. That's my main driver. Is it's like, how can I not let people down, and how can I make sure that people walk away really happy, having had a conversation with me and having worked with me? And for me, having that as kind of like my focal point for everything, it drives innovation, but I don't want too much innovation where I feel like I'm going too fast. And I don't want too much innovation where I feel like my focus is starting to become scarce. I want just enough innovation where I'm able to help my clients better. So I'm continue learning. So I'm knowing what's out there so that I can do a better job at it. And I want to innovate a little bit in my customer acquisition so that I can help more people. So that's not just referral based, but it's like picking one thing at a time and just getting really good at it. And it goes back to coaching, because coaches will help you focus on the thing that you can do to innovate without breaking the whole system. And I think like that's what some people do, is like they'll innovate to the point where it can break everything. And I feel like that's where those businesses really run into huge roadblocks that sometimes they can't always like recover from, because now reputation is
gone.
It's gone.
Or sometimes they just don't innovate at all, and they're like, oh, it'll figure itself out, and then just plummets. What is some advice you would give to someone younger if they wanted to start a business and pursue something, or start something, or go into school or pursue something that they are uncertain of, and everyone else is telling them, no, you need to go do this, go do that, or do this or that, and they have all the voices around them telling them stuff, but they have their own idea of what they want? What is advice you'd give to someone brand new to this environment?
Choose something that you would do for free and that you would want to do long term. Like imagine, like you are going to be doing this. Like that's why I wanted to get into marketing first off, is because I'm not really sure kind of like what business I'm going to end up in at the end. Like I would like to have other businesses and try different things. That's stuff, but like foundationally, marketing is the biggest expense that really any company will have.
Yeah. Yeah. If they really want to be known,
Yeah.
and look at Apple and Amazon and YouTube. It's marketing is everywhere.
So why not, like for me anyways, this was my thought process, is like, why not get good at a skill that's foundational for whatever I want to do in the future? And I knew that I'm self-directed. So that's for me, which is being an entrepreneur. I don't know where I'm going to want to be in 5 years, but if I want to be like, that's the thing, doing something else, I want to be able to have the ability. And I'm never going to stop like Rocket Funnels. And that's why you get to a point of delegation where you don't necessarily have to be as involved in the business as possible. And like, that's where I have team members that come in and be able to help me so that I can get not as involved with the day-to-day as I've been all the time. And that's where you can start putting your focus into other things. So for me anyways, I wanted a vehicle that would allow me to make decisions and not hinder freedom, and something that I would love to do and that I would do for free. Because like, to be honest, I would absolutely make funnels for free. I would absolutely do this stuff for free because I just like to do it. And yeah, it's just always been something. I think like I could really just see myself being creative for the rest of my life. Like that's just something that I would love to do. If I like was on my deathbed and just looking back at the things that I was able to kind of like have a hand in, I would be very satisfied. And I think like for me, it's just something that I know that I subconsciously have always known is I like creating things. And it's just identifying like, what's that thing that you always gravitate towards? What's that thing that you really love doing? And that thing that fills your cup up rather than drains you. And then trying to find, like, you don't necessarily have to find the right thing, but find something that will be able to refine that feeling that you have, that purpose and that spark that you got in you. For me, it was graphic design at first. And then I told you, I just kept reinventing on the problems that I faced. And then I ended up here. So it's not necessarily like one, you don't have to choose like the right path, because God's going to take whatever step you take and put you on the right path. It's like, just choose something that you love to do, something that you know you could do for the rest of your life, and something really that at the end of the day, you would probably do for free, but now you can get paid for it. And like, part of the challenges is like how you can structure your offer, how you can maximize like customer retention and lifetime value. And then that way you're ending up getting paid more. Like for me, that was just always the thing. It was like, what do I love to do, and how can I do that every day?
Yeah, I completely vibe with everything you're saying, to be honest with you. I think once you find that foundation of, okay, but also like realistic too. You don't want to be like, I want to create something that you know will make absolutely no money, and you've seen in the past it makes no money. Because then it's like, you might be a little delusional. But if it's a realistic approach, even for me, like social media, I love it. I could do it for the rest of my life. I could care less if I get paid. Something great, something I enjoy. And once you have that purpose, I think that's kind of what's taught me how to love things as well, is that purpose drive of, okay, this is what I love doing. I'll do it for free for the rest of my life. And you know for a fact in the back of your head, you will do it for free for the rest of your life. I think that's some of the best advice. It's just hard for people sometimes to pinpoint that in their head is like, okay, this is what I want to do. Because again, it's the fear. The fear sets in. Once that fear sets in, all of a sudden anxiety, is it disillusion? I don't know. Just a bunch of negative thoughts come into your mind, and you're like, okay, forget it. Never mind. I'm going to do what everyone else is telling me to do.
Yeah. And like, it's funny because like, you think about it, and the thing that you love to do, there's like, imagine like if you wanted to pursue music. Okay, music can be a tough one for people because they're like, okay, like how am I supposed to sell albums and like get into that full time? It's like, if you think about it, like, okay, well, what if you start doing scores? Like scores for like, even like if I'm writing a VSL and then like it'd be like, okay, I'll put a good score on your VSL to help like people feel more while they're watching your videos and stuff like that. And they start coming up with ideas. It's like, you don't have to go straight to that one end goal that you have. It's like, if you could reverse engineer it into like smaller milestones to get there, that would be better. Because like, think about like, if you wanted to get into music and then, okay, well, I'm going to start a TikTok page where I'm just doing like shorts with music that I write. Like, I can't remember. There's this one guy named Connor something.
The guy from Calgary?
No, I don't think he's from Calgary. But like what I'm trying to get across is like, it's like the thing that you love to do, think about like that one step further. And it's like, what do you love about it? And like, how can you translate that into maybe different kind of services or offerings that might not necessarily be the end all be all yet, but it still feels like it still provides you with that enjoyment. And it might not necessarily look like what you think it needs to look like. And I think that's the beauty of it is because like we all have that vision in our head where it's like, I think I want to get into like music. I think like, okay, I need to be a successful like celebrity that can sell at a stadium, but it's like really not.
It's not easy. No.
But you really don't have to do that, because it's like, instead you can do other things around music, or you can do other, like for me, I wanted to be an artist. So I always thought, okay, that's painting and selling paintings. Actually, no, like I'm just creating digital art.
Yeah, no, it's true. A lot of people like to box up ideas and be like, it has to be this way or it's the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And once you break out of that and you start seeing, oh, I can do this. Like even a dentist is an artist, or a doctor is an artist. Like you're stitching people up, you're adjusting their teeth, you're making crowns, you're having to create braces. Like you are an artist by default.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, that's very true. It's very true. I think I'm gonna wrap the podcast up here though.
Yeah.
Anything you want to final saying to your audience or to anyone listening that you'd want to add another piece of advice to? We've gone through a lot of good advice. I'm not gonna lie. We can almost just end it there if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think like the big thing is, slow is fast. And I think like one big constraint that I always ran into is I just don't want to let people down. And I think like that's kind of like the heart posture that I feel like as business owners, we need to be able to get more into. Like for me, just because your heart posture might not be there right now doesn't mean that it can't be there. And I think like that's for me why I've been going to church and I've been getting more in tune with my relationship with God and stuff like that, because I find that helps me cultivate that heart posture of not wanting to let people down and treating others like to be honest, like the way I look at someone the way I look at customers is like, imagine if I was doing like a funnel for Jesus, like how far I would go to make sure that thing was on point. Like I want to be able to deliver to the level of like that I would be giving to him in a way where it's like, you just know that you did your best. And I think like though, for you to truly be able to do your best, you have to find something that you're in alignment with and something that you love. And as soon as you can find that thing that you love and then start refining your heart posture towards it, I feel like that foundation can weather really any storm, any challenge that you run into. And as soon as you start to see like the confidence in your foundation, then you're not really as worried as to like, okay, am I going to build it wrong? Because at the end of the day, you have the foundation. So if you need to build, you can rebuild again. And for me, that's just kind of like the way that I see it is like right now this works. And like one day, if it doesn't work and AI takes my job, I know that I have the foundation to be able to go back to square one with the information and with the data and with the purpose that God's put in my life and create something else. And that's the thing is like, just do what you can with what you have right now, do it to the best of your ability and do it for the long term.
No, I agree. So that's what we're going to wrap up the podcast. Thanks so much for coming to the podcast.
Appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate the conversation. It's awesome. This was fun.
This was fun.
Yeah. All right, guys. Bye.